Well, parts of Brooklyn are still cleaning up this morning, 24 hours after a twister tore through parts of the borough. Take a look. This is what the Bay Ridge neighborhood looks like. Massive storms dumping 3 inches of rain in less than an hour, and that exposed a much bigger problem. The city subways. The heavy rain brought them to a screeching halt. This follows the deadly steam pipe explosion under a busy Midtown street. This is video of that from back in July. These incidents, coupled with the bridge collapse in Minneapolis, made us take a look at the infrastructure of America's aging cities. Joining me now is New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who says his state isn't getting the money it needs to keep everything maintained. Good morning, Senator. Good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to talk to you.
What a mess yesterday in New York City. And this was actually the 3rd time in just 7 months that the subways were crippled by the rain. There have been calls for years to make some major changes to the drainage system. So why is the nation's largest public transportation system so ill-equipped?
Well, the bottom line is this is a system that's now close to 100 years old. It was an engineering marvel when it was built, but of course all these things deteriorate. And you know, to do the minute-to-minute, day-to-day, month-to-month maintenance is probably the #1 job of any system that carries so many millions of people, and things fall down on the job. In the mid-90s, the subway system reportedly bought $400 million in new pumps. Now, why they didn't work is something that we're all looking at right now. Nobody understands why the MTA didn't work. I mean, we've had torrential downpours before, but it seems the subway closes down far more frequently than it used to, and it's the lifeblood of New York. So we're all asking, what happened?
And apparently Governor Spitzer calling for a 30-day review from the MTA to try to figure that as well. But then on to the other issue, the Minneapolis bridge collapse, causing a lot of state and local officials to say maybe we need to take a second look at our bridges. And in fact, a recent nationwide study had New York's transportation infrastructure as one of the 5 worst in the nation. This study says that 37% of bridges are considered structurally deficient in our state. What can we do to fix that?
Well, Karen, all of this points up a bigger problem, and that is that we've probably put too much emphasis throughout the country at the federal and local level on building new things and not enough on maintaining the old. For instance, when the federal highway system was started by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and for the next 30 years, there was a great need for new highways. Now, most of the new highways that are built go from much less populated areas to others, and yet there's about 4 times as much money, federal money, that goes to new construction than maintenance. And I think the whole thing has to be flipped around. We have to emphasize maintenance. It's not exciting or interesting. Nobody gets up there and cuts a ribbon, but it's necessary, important, and we have to put much more emphasis on maintenance rather than new construction. And that applies to bridges, that applies to highways, that applies to sewer and water systems as well.
And, you know, all of it costs a lot of money, as we know. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, and people want to have money spent on other types of public programs. But there was something interesting that I'd like to get your thoughts on. This opinion piece in the Daily News today says that state leaders have ignored the private sector, or the potential of handing over some of these infrastructures like bridges to the private sector, having them with endless amounts of money be able to maintain them and charge a toll. Is that something that could be a possible solution for the state?
Well, it's a possible solution, but most of our highways, most of our bridges are not toll bridges. If you're going to hand them over to somebody else to do, they may impose tolls. I know that Governor Corzine, for instance, who's a very bright guy and understands all these financial things, decided that it would be certainly worthwhile to look at handing over a lot of the New Jersey Turnpike to private sector, and there was more or less a rebellion in the legislature and among the people in New Jersey.
But the Turnpike's a toll road already, though. That's a toll road.
It is a toll road, but even there, even with it being a toll road, people were worried they'd have no control, the tolls would go up, etc. I think the best thing we can do immediately is to try and redouble the federal and state emphasis, particularly federal, on maintenance and stop focusing so much on new construction. And that's true whether it comes to mass transit, rail, bridge, and as I said, our other kinds of infrastructure. There's a lot of money still going into these areas, but much more into new construction than into maintenance.
Senator Chuck Schumer, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.